If you're wondering why the studio display is so expensive, it's because Tim Cook tried to fake the Apple advantage. The dream for Mac users is to have a genuine Apple display that is integrated functionally and has a coordinated aesthetic.
And the studio display is $15.99.
You wait for years asking for an affordable Apple monitor, and then this overpriced thing. It takes the absolute mickey. Just because I can't afford it, and maybe you can't either, does it mean it's too expensive? To answer this, we need to go back.
Amazing product here.
Steve Jobs was a product man. He'd go on stage and you could tell he loved what he was talking about. Now, following his death, there were questions about how Apple would continue, how it would succeed. And Tim Cook, he took over and he succeeded admirably. But Tim Cook is not a product man. He's a numbers man. Logistics, manufacturing costs, profits, squeezing an extra year of production on an iPhone design so manufacturing costs remain constant. One man is responsible, and that's Tim Cook. In the future, business schools will teach their students to learn from his success. Where Steve Jobs wanted to make great products that would sell, Tim Cook wants great products because they can make great profits. There is a difference, and there has been evidence of this. MacBook Pros that emphasize form over function. They were slimline, but consumers complained about them being underpowered. In a crowded market of consumer tech, Apple has always had a secret sauce. This is the Apple advantage. The Apple advantage in the Mac and iPhone is the integration of hardware and software, allowing for product optimizations that means phones and computers can function far better than similar spec or even superior spec Android phones or Windows PCs. In the past, what Cook has tried to do with Mac and still does with iPhone is emphasize that specs don't matter because of the Apple advantage. The Apple advantage makes Apple's products more desirable. They're perceived as more prestigious, Apple can charge more, thus customers are willing to pay more. Tim Cook's tenure at Apple can be characterized by his ability and desire to generate the maximum profits. This is easy to do with products that have the Apple advantage, but what if they don't? Over the past decade, the Cookism product philosophy is to create the perception of the Apple advantage by adding features that are not standard for that product category, nor the primary motivation for customers buying that product category. These features are included to create a differentiating sense of prestige, so they can be priced high and then marketed as having the Apple advantage.
9 hours down and we're almost in the door.
I think 2 people just left.
Why would they be leaving when we're only 9 hours away?
The problem is, with time, these products are exposed for not delivering appropriate value, just disproportionate expense. With 1 core and 2 non-core product categories, Cook felt he had to add an Apple advantage when there was no natural option to do this. He misjudged the market 3 times. I spoke earlier about how the Apple Mac offered the Apple advantage, but this advantage began to be diminished as the Intel processors inside began to deliver smaller processing gains, and then in comparison, Windows PC laptops were often cheaper and more powerful. Tim Cook needed to differentiate the MacBook with a unique feature, and it is him because he's ultimately responsible, he came up with the Touch Bar. And this really wasn't tested widely enough to see how useful it could be to actual users in practical real-world situations.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they didn't stop to think if they should.
The Touch Bar did add extra costs to the MacBook, which is good for Apple, but it didn't really add extra value for the customers.
Alexa, ask Ola to book a ride.
Booking Ola.
Amazon had had great success with creating the AI assistant smart speaker market with its Alexa devices. Now these were very cheap, around the $30, £30 mark, and it meant that so many of these devices were available and now in people's homes. Tim Cook saw the success of the Alexa and he wanted it. So him and the team at Apple, they created the HomePod, and it was going to be bigger and better, and it focused on the smart sound aspect, so it would offer superior sound, excellent sound in fact, but it would cost significantly more. This was peak Cookism. But what Tim Cook didn't realize is that the beauty of these Alexa devices is that they are so small and that they are so cheap. And with his Cookism, he misjudged the market. And whilst the HomePod, the original HomePod, is a beautiful device, it was 2, it was overpriced for the market that it was targeting. It was over-featured for the market that it was targeting. In the highly competitive monitor market, Apple has now released the Studio Display, and it's very expensive. It's based on the LG Ultrafine 5K display that was created in partnership with Apple, and it has some extra features to differentiate it from other 27-inch monitors. It has a 5K resolution, a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera with center stage to keep the subject in focus, a 6-speaker sound system, and a good selection of ports as well. So that really is a great feature set, but they're not essential to the core monitor experience. And at the price of £1,500 in the UK, that's over £1,000 over the price of an equivalent monitor without those extra features. So it means that the monitor is not essential for everyone. On top of that, there is the stand. Now you get a standard tilt stand built in with it. But to get a stand that goes up and down, you have to pay £400 extra. And the reality is, Apple could have combined a stand that has a tilt and goes up and down for little more than the cost of £100, let's say. But it deliberately chose to make this stand £400 extra, precisely for the purpose of creating the image of prestige, so that there is this perception of the Apple difference. Following the reveal of the Apple Studio Display, a leading tech YouTuber, in his reaction, he made a comment, and I'm paraphrasing here, which he said that not all devices are for everyone, referring to the price. Later in his review, he then did a 180 and he did comment on that price. Now the thing is, he's subsequently gone and edited out that original comment, because you can actually do that as a YouTuber. You can go and hide certain sections of your video. And I think he did this because maybe it would have seemed out of touch or tone deaf, and maybe because it was only with the knowledge of actually having the device in his hands that he could see that it was a misjudgment. But his original point still stands. Just because I can't afford it or you can't afford it, does it mean that it's actually too expensive? If you look at fashion, people pay thousands for designer suits or hundreds of thousands for fast cars. It doesn't mean they're priced wrong. They're just not priced for the masses. A big part of their pricing is their exclusive desirability. Whilst Apple products are high-end and marketed as desirable, they are still tech products. This means that their pricing does not exist in a vacuum and is based in a large part on functionality, on technical performance. So it is warranted to expect a price based on equivalent products by other companies. What's so baffling is that if Apple was to release a superior monitor product but without those extra features and sell it for, say, £700 or $700, yes, the profit margins would be lower, but it would then have the opportunity to sell it to every single desktop Mac user instead of an elite minority. Yes, the Studio Display is priced too high, and unless Tim learns from his cookism philosophy, there will be other products that are too expensive because they don't understand the market and the customer right. But whilst the Studio Display overlooks this, the Mac Studio is a powerful Apple computer that has a custom silicon chipset, which is faster for most tasks than the majority of PC equivalents. The Mac Studio, with its power and consumer-led design, is a fine example of the Apple advantage.